everybody. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. Thanks for coming. And today we are here with Marc Scheff. Hey, Marc, how are you doing?
I'm great. It was great to be here.
Hey, you're calling in from New York, right?
Brooklyn, New York.
Is
Absolutely, yeah.
is it finally warming up there?
It is blazing hot. I train jujitsu every morning and they do not turn on the AC. And as you may know, like we have those kind of bathrobe, it's called a gi that we wear. And man, I mean I come it's like a swimming pool getting out of there these days.
It's so interesting just going around the country, just the United States alone, never mind the rest of the world, just the difference in temperature, and then boom, it's like goes from ice cold to okay, we're about to die and we need air conditioning like overnight. So I feel for everybody out there who is struggling. I'm in the state of Florida. It is always hot here, and it is about to get incredibly hot because we're almost done with May, and June ends up just being the very sticky season. But we suck it up and deal with it and wait for hurricanes.
I remember I grew up in Boston and we used to actually drive down to Florida to Disney World when I was a kid. And I just remember getting out of the car and my shirt kind of going, just like right on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want to today talk to our listeners and help them. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a business.
Sure. I'm a professional, certified professional. You saw my post today. I have a PCC certification from the ICF. I'm a coach. I work and I use creative tools in my coaching. I think coaching is a very creative sport, if you will. But my background is in creativity. I've won awards for my art. I used to work in tech. I was a software developer out of college. And I've worked in corporate. I've worked, in leadership positions, executive positions at a nonprofit. So I've got all these different experiences, and I've gone through a lot of different kinds of career transitions, and I would say mostly successfully. And so, when I transitioned again into this coaching world, in some ways people were like, this is a huge leap, but in many ways it's kind of what I was always doing. Whenever I was leading teams or running my courses or teaching or anything, so much of it was about developing the person. And when you develop the person, the work just follows. So I do work with a lot of creatives because of my background. They say,
Yeah.
this guy probably gets my vibe. But I've also worked with people who, don't do anything like what I do. I've worked with a guy who started two advertising companies and a healthcare exec and someone who advises the current president of the United States. Like I'm not going to tell them how to do their job, but that's not what we do as a coach. People come with some sort of problem, some sort of obstacle, some sort of dissatisfaction, and we work through kind of like the whole picture. And oftentimes they find that working on those other parts helps them find the solutions that they need for themselves.
Yeah, and you know what? The interesting thing is, so first of all, I want to go back to just skipped over it a little bit. Like, oh yeah, I just got this certification. For our listeners, the Professional Certified Coach (PCC) from the ICF organization is incredibly hard to get. So congratulations, dude. That is like, I'm sure the test was hard. I've looked into it too at one point. Not even just the test, the amount of hours you have to put into it.
It's a lot of
To
hours.
it is a ton of hours. So congratulations. Well deserved. Make sure, I know you just found out, so go celebrate. It is well deserved. It's like a degree. It really is.
It really is. And then you have to go through all this education. You have to go through all these mentor hours and this test. And then, you have to be out there, working, and you have to be working as a professional, not just sort of giving the stuff away. And that was a real challenge. But like any challenge I work with my clients on, I have coaches. I've got multiple coaches I work with on my business, on my mindset, on my coaching skills. And, I was working the whole time with all of them, about hitting my goals in a way that really felt, sustainable and really authentic to who I am as a person and as a coach. So thank you. It was a huge effort. I'm really proud to say that I have that today.
Good, good. I'm not good at bragging about myself either, so I will do it for you. The award-winning Marc Scheff is now a certified coach in that organization. You already sort of, have a lot of experience. Now, I have to tell you, I'm the HR lady, so people naturally think, oh, well, you must be a coach. And I'm like, well, I'm not a coach in the way that Marc is. So I would definitely refer people your way because it does take a special skill and it takes a special, I don't know, maybe personality style too. I coach people that I know intimately. They're my clients, they're my employees of my clients, they're my friends. Yeah. I coach them. But the problem also, when you know them so well, is when you coach them and they don't do what you want them to do, then sometimes you take it personal. But that's not what coaching is about. It's not about, hey, do this. That's just directing.
No,
do
that's
this.
Consulting, and that's, and that's mentoring, and that's, that's useful. You got to have this. I have mentors. I have people in my life who I go to and say, tell me what to do, please. I just need someone to give me a task list. But coaching is, you're right. It's a different kind of thing. And it helps people shift their perspective and get around some of the assumptions they've made, the stories they've told themselves about what's possible for them or for others. I was telling you just before the call, I'm leading peer coaching, kind of like a team coaching workshop for progressive leadership this weekend. It's a private event. And I love this concept of peer coaching, and I use it in my online membership that's for artists. And it's a really nice way to sort of structure a conversation in a very easy way, in a very safe way, and a very non-judgmental way, where somebody sort of gets to the answers that they need for themselves. And it doesn't have to, like, you could imagine, the questions I get a lot of times, it's like, okay, if we're doing this on a professional team or, whatever, do I have to, like, sort of bare my soul or talk about these really personal problems? You don't. You can get peer coaching on, what kind of juice that you really need to buy. Maybe that, you could start with that. And with that, it's a great way to build trust within teams. I'll give you an example. Like if you've ever worked on a team, there's going to be people that you vibe, more or less with. So when you do peer coaching and everyone kind of works with each other, there's going to be someone that you work with that where the trust isn't like quite there. And when you work on a small, maybe like really easy problem, what kind of ice cream do I like or whatever, you start to build that trust. And it works because the way peer coaching works is you have, you go back and forth. So at one point, you are able to share something with someone without judgment because there's a format. And if you're on the other side, then you got an opportunity to really listen to someone share something about themselves. So you share and you're listening, and this process starts to build trust within individuals, within groups and on teams. I love the process and I love using it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. How did you end up here? Weren't you an executive director of like a nonprofit?
I was. And, I'm also very proud of the work that we did there. I really took a huge leap. When COVID hit, we moved out of Brooklyn, and I wasn't with my studio, and my kids were home all the time. They were younger at the time. And it was terrible. Like, it was just really hard. Like, no, there's no way of sugarcoating that. If my wife was doing 100% more parenting than she usually does, I was doing 5. Like, I do a lot of the at-home stuff because, she's got her organization that she's building. And it was just really hard. But then, we met someone who had a lot of resources and actual property. And I pitched this idea for radically inclusive and accessible artist residencies and an arts center in upstate New York. So I stepped in as executive director. We had a great big budget, and she handed me a team to work with. The sort of short version of that is that my relationship with the team disintegrated. I was offered a place to stay, but I chose to leave because it was really, honestly, just sharing here, like, it was affecting my mental health. It was making me full on clinically depressed. Like, I didn't get out of bed, and it was a very, very, very hard time. I know that we're only 15 minutes, so I'm telling the sort of short version of the story. My wife is my hero in many ways. At some point she drew a boundary with me. She's like, look, I can't be your therapist. I can't be listening to this all the time. Like, you go deal with that however you're going to deal with it. And also, no rush at all, because, like, we're doing okay. But, you need to have, you, Marc, are going to want to have a plan for, what you're going to do when you're done feeling sad. because these things come in cycles. So that really got me off my butt, and I created an exercise for myself, which I've shared now on my YouTube channel, called the Joy Compass. And I did this exercise, and it was totally eye-opening for me, because what I realized was where I find joy was in doing all of these different things. But the part of those things that was so joyful is when I get to develop people, whether it's in a leadership position or even just, I thought back to conversations that I had with people, in bars, and they wrote to me later and they were like, that conversation changed my life. Like I was able to go and like I had a whole different perspective. I was, worried less and, less anxious and more motivated, all these different things. And so I kind of thought, I literally sat down and said, well, like, who does that? Like, what is that job?
Yeah.
Like who actually gets to do that? I actually applied to and later got into art therapy programs. But in my
Oh,
research, I discovered that I really took more to the coaching format, the kind of results they work for, the kind of clients they work for. I want to help people. I love helping people. And the coaching sort of rubric and modality, just when I was sort of playing with both of them, really, really felt good. And so I dove in, and I'm not going to say it was easy. It was, like you said, it was a lot of work going through, all the education and the many hours and putting myself out there and, hustling and all that stuff. But also, there's this side that was like, are you not an artist anymore because you're not doing this full time anymore? And no, I'm not making that art the way that I was making it before.
right.
I still do make art. But the truth is, I think at heart, I'm a creative. I think we all are, but I think that's where I thrive. And this work, getting to work with all the people I mentioned and all the creatives that I work with, I kind of get to work on all these different projects. What's so great is that I get to work on them but not do the work. So maybe it's like the lazy way of being more productive in a way. But it was, to answer your question, it was a very, very difficult transition. It took many months and then years after to get to kind of where I am now. And I have lots more things that I'm looking forward to doing and things that I'd like to achieve in the future through my work with my clients.
Oh, that's amazing. I love your honesty because, as a coach and just as a professional, it helps other people. There's so many people are afraid to share the hardships that they've been through. And I feel like I just wish as society we would stop that, right? That we would be like, okay, everybody, this is what we're going to do. We're going to open up and be honest and say, guess what? I'm not perfect. I was literally just saying this to a friend yesterday. I was saying, well, listen, we learn by screwing up. And so if
Yeah.
we don't make mistakes, and I say this to all my clients, I'm an HR consultant and I do a lot of management training. And I'm like, please stop fixing your employees' mistakes. And side note for the parents with younger children, please stop stopping them from making
I was
mistakes.
just going to say, parenting is such good training for this kind of stuff because at some point, maybe you don't, but you should realize that at some point, like, they have to make those mistakes, and my son is 13 now, my daughter's 9, and they're getting to an age where, like my son especially, where the stuff's kind of starting to matter a little bit. And if he really, really screws up, like it has a bigger impact than it did when he was, in kindergarten or something. But I'm determined to kind of, oh my God, it's just like holding on to peace and just being like, go ahead, make those mistakes. And actually I had a conversation with him recently where, he wrote to me and said, oh, a teacher thought he didn't hand something in and he says he did. And he's like, can you email them? And I was like, actually, I'm not going to do that. Because when you're out in the world, you're gonna have to just go have that conversation. It's
Yep.
not gonna be hard. You're not gonna die. You're gonna go and you're gonna go and you're gonna talk to them. And honestly, they'll probably be fine with it. But I know that you're maybe like a little bit. He's like, I'm not nervous. I'm like, okay, you're not great. You're not nervous. But it's something that you have to do. So I'm really trying to bring my coaching mindset to my parenting skills, which is both challenging but also encouraging and supporting.
Yeah, it's super important. So for our listeners today, please let your employees and your children screw up. I mean, on the minor things, if it's something life-threatening, let's step in. But on the minor things, let them screw up because think about a time when a leader said publicly, you were watching a show, you're watching a newscast, or even in your organization, if a leader came to you and said, hey, I made a mistake and that project failed because of me, not because of the team. I always ask people, do you have more respect for that person or less? And 99% of the time, everybody says, I have more respect for that person because they've admitted they screwed up. They took accountability for us and the team. And they say, what are we going to do moving forward? And, that's part of being a coach too, especially as a certified coach. So, before we wrap up here, what are some, key pieces of advice that you would give to people on two sides? One, most of our people that are listening today are HR, or they're wearing the HR hat, manager, small business owner. So they're going to have to step in and be a coach. And then sometimes they're going to need to call you or call other coaches and say, I need help. So what key piece of advice can you give them to say, okay, you can handle this yourself, or no, you need an expert involved?
Yeah, good question. And there's lots of information about this there. So I will say, feel free to go online and do some research about bringing a coaching mindset to your leadership. I'll give you an example of advice in the form of an example.
Mm-hmm.
I did some seasonal work for Burning Man, where I was liaison, which is a little bit kind of like a coach and a mentor for the art teams that bring these like crazy big sculptures out to the desert every year. And I screwed up. I really screwed. I screwed up. There was a project that was coming, out there, and I knew that they weren't bringing kind of what they said they were going to bring. And I kind of waited to tell my boss, who's the head of the department, and I thought maybe we can kind of pull this out. But I waited, and then sure enough, they weren't able to bring. And it happens every year. It happens where people kind of overshoot and say, okay, we've got to pare it down. And I went to her and I said, look, I need to tell you that, if you go out there and you look at this project, this is what you're going to see. And she was like, okay, well, I wish that I had known sooner. So, if this next time, like as soon as like that, that's what I want. So she set very clear, she reset the expectations with me that, like, I understand. Thank you for coming to me. Let me reset the expectations with you. And then she said, okay. And she brought me in. She's like, what are we gonna do now? Like, what do you think the right answer is now? She actually asked me, instead of saying, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, go, please go, sulk in your tent. She brought me into the conversation and invited me to come up with a solution, which helped me develop my skills as a problem solver. So, the next year when I came back, I was able to actually do even more with my art teams. So approaching with a coaching mindset, yes, maybe you have rules where there's, people get infractions, warnings, all these other things. Those things are valid. But inviting someone into the conversation and asking, like, let's come up with a good solution here, both for if and when this kind of situation happens again, how do you want to approach it differently so that this doesn't happen? And also, what's the best answer that we can do now to fix this mistake? It really gives agency to the people that you're working with. I felt actually kind of great after that conversation, where I was kind of going in with my, with my head held high. And I'd known that about her. So I felt comfortable going to her and telling her these things. But if you can develop that environment where people know that's the kind of conversation that you're going to have with them, where you're going to support them, it's not like you're not going to like cancel them and fire them. They're never invited back. But if, you invite and if someone really can't come up with a solution or keeps, doing it, there's other things that you have to do. But really inviting them to their own self-leadership is such a powerful way to approach these conversations.
I love it. I love it. Hey, how can people reach you?
You can find almost all of my stuff on my website, which is Marc Scheff Coaching. I'm sure you'll put a link in the thing, but it's MarcScheff Coaching. I'm also Marc Scheff on LinkedIn and kind of everywhere.
Awesome. And I also see that you have a lot of packages too. So if anybody is looking for just a 20-minute laser session with Marc, you can have that all the way up to the 2-hour coaching session. And of course, group work too. Hey, Marc, thanks for coming today. And again, congratulations on your professional certified coach certification, PCC. Very, very hard work and well done.
Thank you so much. You literally heard it here first, folks. Wendy, thanks for having me. This was a very fast-paced and amazing conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Wendy Sellers, the HR lady.